Hey, good morning. Welcome to the 49ers Roundtable. I'm Grant Cohn, joined by Martinez and Rohan Chakravarthi. It is time to get over the Super Bowl loss. I guess some people have already gotten over it, but I've been really trying to hammer home some accountability on this team. But I think we've done it for 2 weeks. It's time to look ahead because the next year is upon us. The combine's coming up. Rohan's going to freaking be there. I said I'd go, and then I punked out. Next time I'll go with you. We can be friends. How you doing, Marco?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Grant?
I like your hat.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I like your blazer.
I appreciate it. You know, I wanted to dress
came out in style.
Yeah. So, look, combine's next week. Give me the positional needs on the Niners. Like, which positions are the most important for fans and the front office to be zeroing in on in this underwear Olympics? Marco, you go first. I feel like you got something to say.
They should definitely go get a head coach, defensive coordinator. Not in
all
seriousness.
So cynical over the last few years. I love it.
In all seriousness, the main positional need is right tackle. The way the combine and everyone's there, like the draft should fall, right tackle should be there. Offensive tackle, offensive lineman is deep in this class. Back in November, I had 9 first-round draft grades on offensive linemen. It's still that way for me. So for me, I definitely think offensive tackle is the key, or a guard if they feel like a guard's better, center with Jackson Powers there. For me, I definitely think offensive line. You can't go to the Super Bowl, get your ass whooped because your offensive line sucks, and then not expect to draft an offensive lineman. Like, it's pretty bad when that's the key for the last few years. You lose because of your offensive line. So definitely, I think offensive line is high up there. I think edge rusher opposite of Nick Bosa is up there as well. If you can't get home with the front four, that's a big issue. So I think offensive tackle and edge rusher is my second one. But if I had to give a third one, definitely would be probably corner. But I'm not too worried on corner. I think you could replace a nickel and then just move Demo outside and have Ambry Thomas not play. Like, it's not that hard to not have Ambry Thomas play. If you would have had Samuel Womack in the slot, just don't play him. Like, it's not that hard. Like, so I think it's an easier fix than everyone truly thinks, to be honest with you.
Rohan.
I think what Marco said is pretty accurate. You know, you talk about this class. The Niners, the last few seasons, they've had an excuse in the draft, not going for offensive linemen. You can say it's because they don't like to play them when they're younger. You know, they prefer more veteran options, or whether it was they had a third-round pick last year. You don't want a third-round tackle starting. Like Marco said, there might be 9 to 10 offensive linemen in this class that are first-rounders, that have first-round grades. They're not all going to go in the first round, which means talent should be there at 31 that could potentially start on day one. And so I think, I'm not saying you go into it saying I'm going to draft a tackle at 31. I think this is the best class for BPA in the Niners' sake, but there's BPA very well could be one of the most premier positions in football at 31. Elsewhere, the one other position I want to add to the list, you talk about edge rusher, you can talk about defensive line as a whole, maybe getting some more depth at defensive tackle if you can't bring other guys back. But I want to talk about receiver because, I mean, you're hearing Brandon Ayuk trade rumors. I don't know how much I'd buy them, but regardless, in 2025, 1 year from now, the Niners like to project, you're probably going to have to make a decision. And you might even lose your slot guy in Juwan Jennings. You need insurance there. The guys you've picked up before haven't been that impressive. I would look to target receiver as well within the first 4 rounds.
I like that. I'm gonna throw out some wild cards. You guys hit the big ones. I've been doing a little series for SI.com, all 49ers, just like taking stock of each position, and I'll just go through each player, each position, and at the end, I'm ask myself, is there arrow trending up or down? I did the tight ends this morning. I felt like every single tight end on their team is stock down. Every single one. No offense to George Kittle because he's all pro, but you can't say he's getting better at this point in his career. And then every single other tight end on the team is replaceable. Sorry, Ross Dwelly. But they need a tight end. They've needed a tight end for years. I understand why they drafted Cam Latu, but I don't think he's the one. So they may need to take another stab at that position, kind of like when they took Trey Sermon and then took Tyler Davis-Price, and then that didn't work out either. They should take a good tight end.
Jatavion Sanders?
And then who?
Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. That'd be a perfect at 31. Take him there and then go get offensive tackle or whatever you need, positional value, and at 60, what is it, 63 or whatever.
I mean, especially if you're talking about like potentially cutting Kyle Juszczyk, which I'm not against. I mean, $7.5 million against the cap to do what at this point? Catch
point, Kyle. Come on,
15
it's Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just feel like it's a good player. He's 33. They don't use him much anymore. He's too expensive. Yeah, if they cut him, get another tight end. It's another reason to get a tight end. Also, quarterback. Not because of Brock, but because I feel like Brandon Allen, Sam Darnold, deuces, and good luck. But Brian Greasy and Steve Slowick have drafted one quarterback. It was Brock Purdy. I don't know if it was just them, but I'd like to see what they could do with the second shot. They seem like they know what they're looking for. Curious to see if they draft a quarterback this year. Although everyone's looking for the next Brock Purdy now, right? Didn't all of a sudden
there was an article that came out on that. But if you talk about quarterback, talk about tight end, I think those two positions, it's intriguing because in free agency, they're starting to become a little premium in terms of backup quarterbacks, backup tight ends. You're paying $6-7 million. Draft might be the place, you
Can they go get Jake Browning?
Hey, man, he's coming back with a vengeance.
He's a baller. You're going to say Marco?
I said if you think about it, it's funny because the S2 score for Brock Purdy was elite. Like, he was like everyone, like that's why the Niners kind of drafted him because of those scores. And then CJ Stroud comes out and it's like terrible, but he does great, like, which is funny. So it's going to be definitely, if you're following the metrics, I mean, if you're going to take a quarterback, take someone with upside, man. Like, don't go and like, you know what, let's find a quarterback that we could possibly win. Go get upside. That's what I'm here for. Upside.
Well, with the Niners, though, they're not going to be taking a quarterback in the top 10 or the first 3 rounds. It'd be interesting to see if they take another guy at all or sign him after as an undrafted free agent. What trade would he be? Like another Brock Purdy type? Seems like you'd look for that, right? I mean, you started this trend. I don't know. Can he just be able to throw the ball in the rain? That's the one thing about Brock Purdy that bugs me, man. Like, you can't throw the ball when it's a little bit wet. That's a problem in Northern California. But maybe we can get him some gloves, or he can learn to throw with gloves. Let's not bash on Brock Purdy. Huh?
He's gonna be like Teddy Two Gloves over there, man. It's not gonna happen. Like, I honestly, if you truly can't grip the ball with your bare hands, it means you have too small of hands to play in the NFL at quarterback, and that's a big issue because
I think it's
if you look at the teams that are going to be in the playoffs in the NFC for the long future, right? Most likely Green Bay is one of those. So you might be on the road going to Green Bay a lot of your time in the NFL if you're Brock Purdy. Can you play in that kind of Rohan? What's the weather like during the playoffs out there? You're obviously in Wisconsin. It's freezing cold, right? You can't grip the ball there, and you can't grip it now. Like, it's an issue in my opinion, but I think he played great. You can't really say like he didn't play good. He really played great. But I think quarterback 2 is definitely a big position unless Kyle decides to go with the greatest quarterback to ever throw the football for the 49ers and re-sign Sam Darnold.
I have a bonus topic. It just popped in my head. So Brock Purdy isn't eligible for an extension this year. He'll be eligible next year. At this point in his career, 27 starts in, 2 NFC Championship appearances and a Super Bowl appearances. Has he shown enough right now to be the Niners franchise quarterback to get that extension next year? Or does he have more to prove?
That's a good topic. I mean, to me, here's how it is. Has Brock Purdy shown enough for me to be in the franchise quarterback realm? To me, that's the top 12, 13 quarterbacks in the NFL. Yes. I initially had him around 10. I think he's around 10 to 12 for me, somewhere around there right now. But the point is, the goal is to win when you have a franchise quarterback. You're looking to get one. The unfortunate issue is it's so hard to find a franchise quarterback that once you find a guy who you believe can resemble that, you're essentially committed to it. That's why a lot of coaches get fired when it doesn't work out. And that's why a lot of these players get extended or see big money deals, even though teams, Dak Prescott, for example, even though there's scrutiny outside of it, what other choices does the franchise have? And I think the 49ers will be in a similar realm. One, they've struggled to develop the position. They had to get a guy who really came out of college pretty developed. And then obviously Brock Purdy has grown significantly since his collegiate days as well. But 2, I mean, every other move that they've made at the quarterback position has not worked out. I mean, if you're talking about moves that they've made or even moves that they haven't made. So for me, has Brock Purdy shown enough? I think he's proven to be in the franchise realm. I don't know if he's in the elite realm, which is where you're really comfortable to pay quarterbacks, that top, 5 to 7 quarterbacks in the NFL kind of realm. But to me, I don't know if the 49ers have a choice. I think ultimately when it comes down to it, they're going to have to dish out that contract, and the quarterback price continues to increase and increase, maybe $50 million,
I mean, I think the biggest thing you said, Grant, was franchise quarterback, right? When you say franchise quarterback, it's someone you're willing to pay the 40 millions, the 50 millions dollars to be your guy. Now, when your roster becomes depleted with talent, obviously when you lose guys, you're obviously going to lose George Kittle, you're going to lose guys like Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel eventually. Can he be that guy to carry them? I don't think he can. I said from the beginning, I don't think the Niners win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. I think he's a very capable quarterback. Now, the issue is you can't consistently throw with anticipation. Sometimes you got to put the ball on your receiver, especially in tighter windows and man coverage. If you look at what the Ravens did, they went man coverage. They try to force him to beat him with his arm talent. And you're going to have teams do that. The Browns did it as well.
That's a good point.
The more you
anticipation is a zone thing, right? Like when it's man, you're picking out a matchup and you're trying to fit it in a little spot.
Exactly. And that's an issue because when the anticipation is there, he looks phenomenal, right? He looks great. But then it also leads to interceptions when you can throw with anticipation, but that means you and your receiver better 100% be on the same page. And that's why we saw a lot of interceptions where it was just like terrible throws because he's thrown with anticipation. But so for me, I don't think he is. And I think he could show it this next year. Obviously, we just saw 1 year, so I'm not saying he can't show it. He's definitely going to be in a situation where he's already built a great resume for being the seventh round quarterback the Niners drafted. Took him to the Super Bowl, NFC Championship, played great in the second half. So he's built a solid resume so far. But let's see what next year is when teams start going more man against him. How can he respond to that? So I think it's definitely can he build off of the strong year he had versus me saying right now, I don't think he is right now.
I agree. I think he has more to prove. I think, he was so great this season. Bounced back after that 3-game skid, but then he was just awful on Christmas night. And it felt like he never really fully bounced back after that game. And in the playoffs, that wasn't Brock Purdy. That wasn't the Brock Purdy I know. I mean, he wasn't bad in the playoffs. He battled. He was tough in the Super Bowl, but like that's not the MVP candidate Brock Purdy. His quarterback rating was like 80 something, 88, 89. That's not Brock Purdy. And I want to know what happened. Was it you weren't going against great defenses? You were in the Super Bowl, but in the other 2 games you weren't. The rain was a problem. As Marco pointed out earlier, that's going to be an issue in the playoffs, most likely every year. Some weather. So, are you going to come back down to earth like Jalen Hurts did this year? Have people figured you out? Do you have an aversion to precipitation? All these things we need to find out before we give you $55 to $60 million a year. Could be a big mistake. I don't think he's necessarily locked up the bag yet. I don't think he has. He may get it.
But that's also not saying like he can't prove it, right? Like we've only saw 1 year. So like I know when I see this, people are going to be like, oh, this dude's just a hater. Well, yeah, I'm seeing 1 year of it. But there's also through the 1 year.
You're not betting against them. You're just saying wait and see.
But it's also what we've seen in the 1 year. There's concerns. And if you're not looking at those concerns, we saw those concerns with Jimmy too. And we closed our eyes and said, hopefully he fixes them. And he sure as hell didn't, right? So we can't close our eyes to Brock and say, hopefully he fixes what's concerning on the tape because it's there. So I know his talent isn't the greatest and he plays with IQ and anticipation. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing if he could do that because he definitely has proven a lot of people wrong to this point.
Yeah, and it's like the Niners have built their team in such a way where they don't really spend on quarterback. It's the whole structure of the team is to spend everywhere else. So is Brock Purdy so good that they're gonna flip that structure and all of a sudden pour money into the quarterback position, or do they want to keep things the way they are and feel like, you know what, we're just going to get someone else to play for $900,000 a year? Thank you very much, Brock Purdy. These are things he needs to prove next year that you're really worth $60 million. Speaking of next year, should the Niners go all in for one last dance with the same crew they've been running it back with, Revenge Tour 8.0, or should they start looking to the future? Rohan, you start this one.
I think this is a really good question. And ultimately, in my opinion, I don't think they have a choice. They've kind of put themselves in a position to where they really have one option. Go out and look at every single one of the top players for the 49ers. Trent Williams, Arik Armstead, George
30,
Kittle, the aging
30.
veterans that are getting up there in age. However, the 49ers set their system up understanding we really have 2023 and 2024 with Brock Purdy secured on his rookie deal worth $900,000. After that, 2025 is when he becomes extension eligible. The 49ers like to get deals done after the fourth year, but there's going to be talk about extension next offseason. And so you want to make sure that you capitalize on this window. And if you look at all the contracts that the 49ers have, it is tough to move off of some of these deals. I understand people saying, if you want to trade them or if you want to try and figure something out, but it's not helping you salary-wise to move off of guys like George Kittle or Arik Armstead or any of these guys this specific year. Next year, I think there's a ton of avenues that open up. I would not expect this team to look the same next year. But as for now, I think right now, the number one, at least financially, the number one realistic path, in my opinion, is for the 49ers to go all in 2024. Now, can that team win a Super Bowl? I'll get to you back in August, because I boldly said at the beginning of this past season, the Niners were not going to win a Super Bowl if this was the infrastructure that they were going to put out. A lot of people didn't like it then. A lot of people didn't like it when I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. It's just the way that it was. And I don't know if this core is going to be good enough to win. They're going to face some other situations, because this year they were injury-free, really, for the most part. I know you had the Dre Greenlaw injury and things like that. Aging rosters usually result in more injuries. We've seen years go to bust. I personally think the Niners have the strongest core in the NFL, even with their aging roster. I think they have the strongest core. The signs, though, point to them going all in for this year, which to me means you're going to extend Brandon Ayuk to a deal. You're going to bring him back as your receiver one, and then you have a decision to make next offseason whether or not you find it feasible to pay two receivers. Hint, it's not possible, really. So you're probably going to move on from his counterpart, Deebo Samuel, next offseason. That's what I'd say.
I think Rohan said it perfectly. Like, just the way their cap numbers and everything works, you can't really trade George Kittle. Brandon Ayuk is stupid to trade because you saved $10 million this year on him. Deebo, you eat a big number. So for the way the Niners, like, they say, oh, we have a cap guru and whatever his name is, who's supposed to make their contracts great. He's terrible at contracts. Let's be honest with it. When he has to sign big name players, he's terrible with contracts. I definitely think Niners, you got to go all in now, because everything you've done for the last 4 years, where you get to the playoffs, you make it, you look like a great team, and you lose in the Super Bowl or you lose in the NFC Championship. It doesn't make sense to not go all in one last time with this core and give them the respect that they deserve and say, hey, well, at least tried, right? Like, so for me, I definitely think they're gonna go all in. It's not the smartest thing, because that most likely
Run it back.
It's not the smartest thing, though, because you have like guys like Juice, right, who are going to be back for $7 million when you could save 6.5 or whatever, 6 point something as the number, which should go to another position. A guy, possibly a linebacker, a receiver. Oh, maybe the Niners have an offensive line problem. Maybe if we address that with that money, but instead the sentimental value that they hold on their players, especially Kyle, bringing back.
He's got a great nickname, and the fans love him. Did you know he went to Harvard? I'm sorry.
He's an offensive weapon. That's what I'm saying. Like, but
don't you dare call him a fullback ever.
He's an offensive weapon, but the last time I checked, the amount of percent of time that he plays, last year he was on the field for 46% of Kyle's snaps on offense. That's an issue, right? If you're getting paid $7 million, you better be on the field more than 50% of the time. So for me, I definitely think they're gonna go all in versus the future. It's not the right move, but it's also the only move they have, because they handcuff themselves to this cap situation, pushing all these players' money back, Arik Armstead's money back, and doing stuff like that. So they're in a situation where they have to, and if they don't, they screw themselves.
Yeah, it's for them to pivot right now and try to rebuild. They'd have to take on so much dead cap, right? It would be almost pointless. So also, I think the way they look at it is their Super Bowl window is Brock's rookie contract. They can have this team this one more year. And they probably thought they would have
100%.
won a Super Bowl by now. But this is it. They can have this super team, quote unquote, for one more year. And then after next year, they have to decide, can they keep the super team together and swap out the quarterback, or do they commit to Brock and build like a conventional team with a really, expensive quarterback? That's what they got to decide. But for one more year, this is the team. It's not good enough. I don't understand. It's not good enough. And do we really have to learn that again next year? It's the best team in the NFC, sure. Okay, maybe, probably. But they need to switch something up about their formula. The offensive line, they never invest enough in that spot. I don't know. Also, the head coach. The head coach, you could give him a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl. He's going to find a way to lose that game.
So, I mean, but the thing is, though, Grant, are they truly going to be all in? Like, they have a defense coordinator that we don't even know who he is yet. Like, if you're all in, your defensive coordinator is going to be
Kyle. It's Fred Warner.
Right? So if you
Name
have
it Fred Warner.
If you're all in, you go get a top defensive coordinator from the college ranks, or you make sure Mike Vrabel is the guy that's yours and you hire him and don't let him leave your building. If you're all in, that's what you're doing.
Right.
They're not all in.
Like the Eagles, who we don't even think anything of. They went and got Vic Fangio. They think they're all in, even though we don't think they're all in. But the Niners are messing around. Should we elevate Daniel Bullocks or Nick Sorensen? Which guy that we didn't trust last year are we going to say we trust this year? Or are we going to go get, real quick, who do you guys think they're going to get a D coordinator?
Internal. I think it's going to be one of the guys that, Bullock seems like the guy right now, but I think it's
going to sell that. Hey, we didn't want him last year. We didn't think he was ready. We brought in Steve Wilkes, which everyone kind of realized was an awkward fit to begin with. That didn't work. Turns out Bullocks was ready all along. Here he is. Like, I don't know.
And here's something I said earlier this week about the defensive coordinator spot. The 49ers had a plan prior to Steve Wilkes that, you could see what they were trying to do. And this is the reason that a lot of people give Kyle Shanahan credit when it comes to his coaching hires. They give him the benefit of the doubt because it's worked in years past. Robert Saleh, obviously, he got a head coaching job. Then we remember the first year of the DeMeco Ryans experience, those first few weeks, people, myself included, were questioning whether this would be the right fit because there were certain mistakes that Ryans was making. But then you realize as he, grew as a play caller over the course of that season, he starts to become a much better defensive coordinator towards the end of the year. Year 2, DeMeco Ryans is the best defensive coordinator in football. He ends up growing. If you continue that internal trend, you kind of get away with that leeway period in the beginning of this past year with a guy like Bullocks. You're allowing him to grow as a play caller, and he's much more prepared in year 2, which would be maximizing your Super Bowl window. That's the one gripe, if it ultimately becomes internal, that I have with the way the 49ers went through things. Because in my opinion, 23 and 24 was the 2-year window that they had to maximize their opportunity for this to win a Super Bowl. And I think not only does it count on the players, but also on the coaching staff. And I think they set back that development of whoever, if it's internal, whoever that defensive coordinator will be by 1 year by not promoting him last year and allowing him to kind of delve through his play calling, the ups and downs of the play calling experience on his own.
Is it my turn to talk? Yeah. I think we got it. Let's take some super chats. I think we got it. Corey Soto. No one is looking for the next Purdy, still looking for the next Mahomes or as close as possible. Purdy fever dream among Niner fans. I disagree. Obviously, if you're in the top 10, you're looking for the next Mahomes for sure. But there's this whole dream now that like, hey, I could just find a guy on day 3 who is 6 feet tall and has no arm strength. And he threw 1,500 passes in college and he might be good. Doesn't mean he'll be good, but I think that's the Brock Purdy market right now. I think Daniel Jeremiah just put out an article about it. It's obvious. Teams are afraid of the Trey Lance experience. Take a guy with no experience and you develop him. It's not a developmental league. Some teams can do it. The Packers did it with Jordan Love. Give them credit. They're good at developing quarterbacks, but every other freaking franchise sucks at it. So the idea of like ready-made quarterbacks who are cheap and available is appealing to a team that can't find a quarterback like the Niners for years. So Corey.
If you do it the right way, you could get the next Mahomes, but you got to play that guy year 1.
Yeah. We can't mess around all day, every day. Kim says that name is dangerous. Penix Jr. Sorry, I said it wrong.
That was on purpose. We know
My
that.
bad. I tried.
I don't say his name. I just call him by his first name.
I saw a highlight reel of him on Twitter, like mirrored, so he looked right-handed. He looked so much better.
Oh yeah.
I think people should watch that. You might have a different opinion about him if you just watch him play right-handed. He looks so much better. It's crazy. Daza0187 says, if you could draft Brock Purdy with the last pick, why can't you do it again? He's very good, but not worth $50+ million. He still hasn't shown he can take over a game by himself like the top 7 quarterbacks.
The question is, do you trust them to develop them? Draft and develop them. That's the question.
I mean, if you're looking for a similar quarterback to Brock Purdy this year and you are going to move off of Brock after next year, Michael Pratt from Tulane. Change their program, has good enough arm, talent, he's athletic enough. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going after the Brock Purdy quarterback, I think that's why he's going to go a little bit higher in this draft class. He might go in the 3rd, maybe even earlier, because people are trying to get the next Brock Purdy, and I think he's the closest thing to it in this draft.
Just saying, if you find a quarterback in college who has enough experience for you to say he knows what he's doing, there's no learning curve. I don't know what his ceiling is. Put him on the Niners. He's going to look good. End of story. He's going to look good because every play ends up with him completing a pass to McCaffrey or Debo or Ayuk or Kittle. It's like, yeah, they should draft another quarterback. I agree. Steven Draper. Roster was not the issue. Arrogance in coaching without audacity. Arrogance in coaching without audacity is the issue. Without audacity? Arrogance without audacity? What does that mean? I like it, though. But yeah, I think there was some arrogance. Whoever gets to DC will get fired in 1 year. Yeah, man. They just set the precedent, right? Like, it went from 16.5 points a game to 17.5 points a game. You're fired. So if they give up 18.5 points per game next year, you got to fire them. Got to fire them. Sorry, Steve. All right, let's check out the BetUS lines for free agency. Let's see if the Niners are implicated in any of these free agents according to BetUS. Okay. Mike Evans. The Niners are plus 3,000 to get Mike Evans. What, if they get rid of Brandon Ayuk? Is that where they would turn?
Do they even have the money for it? I mean, if you're going to pay somebody, just pay Ayuk.
What's kind of scary is that the odds-on favorite to get Mike Evans is the Chiefs. That would suck.
Which makes sense.
It does. He'd be so much better than Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Yeah. So if the Niners don't get him, he'll go to the Chiefs. Okay, look, who else? T. Higgins. And again, plus 3,000. And the odds-on favorite is the Patriots. Why would you waste your time there? Or the Cowboys? Go to the Bills. What if the Bills get T. Higgins? That would be bad.
That'd be pretty cool.
But T. Higgins likely is more to get franchise tagged than Mike Evans. Mike Evans' number for the franchise tag is outrageous versus T. Higgins. It's kind of doable, and then they could extend him. So I think T. Higgins stays in Cincinnati.
They got Austin Eckler going to the Ravens or the Eagles.
I say Eagles.
Who's going to be the Chargers running back? Who's Harbaugh going to get?
Frank Gore Jr.
Hey, good call. Baker Mayfield to the Falcons or the Seahawks? Baker to the Seahawks. I mean,
they're going Geno and Baker. They're paying. That's their two $40 million quarterbacks.
Yikes! Good point. Calvin Ridley. I don't really care. Derrick Henry to the Ravens plus 200. Wow, that would be a power move. Or the Cowboys. It's actually the Cowboys getting him. Or the Eagles.
Yeah, he could fill that.
That'd be interesting if Derrick Henry came to the NFC.
I mean, if he's trying to run over people in the NFC, Cowboys is a smart choice. Like, they have a good O-line, good quarterback, passing game. You're not going to see loaded boxes versus if you go to the Ravens, you might see a little bit more loaded boxes than you would in Dallas.
How about this Josh Jacobs to the Chargers? That would be a nice pickup for Harbaugh.
Him or Barkley.
Let me go to one more prop bet that you guys will like. Jimmy, next team by week 1.
Where's the Niners? Oh, that's not bad. 1,000 plus 1,000. I mean, that's not bad.
You really think they'd do it?
Oh my God! Wait, I see the bottom though. No team in 2024 is
plus 650. Can we bet on that? Actually, I want to bet on that. What do you think's the best bet on this
for week
Probably
1?
No team
for week 1.
Probably no team. I mean, he's suspended, right?
Minnesota.
That
actually does make sense. They take a rookie quarterback and they pick up a veteran who could help them out, and try to develop them. Then he's a backup quarterback, and if it worst comes to worst, he plays a few games. I think Minnesota and Pittsburgh make sense.
Minnesota is so committed to mid quarterbacks. Although Kirk Cousins is better than mid. Where's Kirk going to go?
I mean, he
Doesn't
got
matter.
spots. He got
No
spots.
comment. No
I'm
comments.
putting no team. He's got the PED suspension. I don't think anyone wants Jimmy. I'm putting no team. I'm putting my money where I'm at.
Jimmy Flacco. He's going to be the next Flacco. He'll come back midseason, carry a team to the Super Bowl, and then have a nice playoff outing with a couple pick sixes.
Okay. They're limiting me to $10 because they know I'm right. That's cool though. I'm putting $10 on Jimmy to not be on a team week 1, placing it now, confirming the bet. Go to BetUS, sign up with the link in the description to get 125% sign up bonus up to $2,500 on your first 3 deposits with code JOIN125. Boom. Boom. All right, I got a question for you too. Who should the 49ers definitely re-sign?
Go ahead, Ron.
You talk about a couple of the guys the 49ers have. I mean, they got, I think it's the numbers 20 total, 18 free agents that are unrestricted, 2 that are restricted. But there's not really many marquee names. So it's a lot of depth pieces, that you're looking to re-sign. I think if you're talking about the top of the board for me, if he doesn't price himself out, Javon Kinlaw. But the issue is defensive tackle is another, that spot is a premium. Some people pay $4.5 million for him. Don't know if the Niners are going to do that. He would be a guy though. But I think some of the more, underrated guys, Cleveland Farrell, you saw what we was missing in run defense. I think he could be a solid run defender and a guy who plays maybe 15%, 20% of the defensive snaps. You can get him for cheap elsewhere. I think you definitely look to get back Juwan Jennings. The question is, because he's a restricted free agent, you have to place a tender on him. Are you going to pay him $4.6 million and place a second round tender? Or are you only going to pay him $2.8 million? Because the difference is a team has to pay a second round pick if they want him. No one's going to do that. Whereas a team wouldn't have to pay anything. It's just the 49ers would get a chance to match. They probably don't match a big deal. And so I think he's the biggest question of how they're going to handle his free agency. They'll probably have to put feelers out and figure that out. I think those 2 guys, though, are those 3 are probably near the top of my list. Honestly, though, for me, I'm totally fine with them kind of clearing house with a lot of these depth pieces. You have a big draft coming up ahead. I think the 49ers realize they're going to need to go cheaper. The draft is the number one way to go cheaper. They have to hit on this draft. Especially after you look at their last 2 classes. 23 was all right, but not the best. You didn't have much capital, and 22 is looking really bad apart from that one Brock Purdy selection. And so I think you have to hit on this draft. Would be totally fine if they kind of clear house with the majority of their free agents.
So for me, there's only 2 people that I think you should bring back. And one of them is a longer shot because he's probably going to get paid more, and that's Chase Young. Now, when you look at people are like, oh, Chase Young sucks, but whatever. I don't care what people say because you look at the numbers and the stats, 15%, 1% on pass rushing moves and stuff like that. That was a top 30 in the NFL. So for me, 65 or 66 pressures was his career high, 7.5 sacks, career high. In the Super Bowl, he looked legit, looked like he was actually playing like himself. So for me, I think Chase Young is it. But with his bigger cap number and bigger contract that he'll probably command, I think the Niners let him walk and get a comp pick the following year. So the other guy is Juwan Jennings. After that, I don't truly see a player on the free agent list of the 49ers that I'm like, you know what? Let's bring back. I'm fine with letting Ross Dwelly walk. I mean, I know he's Kyle Shanahan's favorite and Grant's favorite, but it's okay to let him walk.
Is he Kyle's favorite? They never play him.
But
it's hard to say why he was on the team in the last few years.
You know when you're like best buds with someone and you owe them a favor, like, and no matter what, that's kind of like how I see it. So besides that, I truly don't, like, all jokes aside, I don't see anyone on the free agent list from the 49ers. I'm like, hey, he needs to come back. Outside of like Chase Young, I guess Sam Darnold, if he wants to be a backup quarterback next year at a much cheaper rate, I can see that. I know I've seen people throw out John Feliciano, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to bring back someone who talks shit about one of his teammates on a platform to discredit who he is. Besides, like, realistically, there's no one free agent wise where like they must bring this guy back. It doesn't make sense to run it back while you're also bringing free agents who you need to let walk. Like, it's time to get younger, cheaper. You have 11 draft picks. Keep them all on your team this year, even if they don't play. There's no spot for them to play anyways. Why don't you start developing young talent?
Jennings is interesting because it feels like from another team's perspective, he might be someone you might want to poach. He played so well in the Super Bowl. You might feel like, that's a starting wide receiver in the NFL, and he just hasn't shown it. He doesn't have the numbers to back it up because he doesn't have the targets. But on our team, we could give him more opportunities. We could buy low. I wonder at what point the Niners would match, or at what point they'd say, you know what, we'll take the second round pick.
Now, that's where I brought up the tender, because if they just do the right of refusal tender at $2.8 million, I have a feeling a team is going to be willing to pay because they don't have to give up anything. So I could see Juwan Jennings getting offers in the $7 to $10 million annually range. The deal that you saw Kendrick Bourne get, Jennings is a better player than Bourne was back then, and he got $8 million a year when the market wasn't as high for receivers, which is why I would personally suggest if you really want to keep him, that second round tender might be the way you have to go. You pay an extra $1.8 million, but at least no one's going to give up a second round pick, in my opinion, for Juwan Jennings. So I think that's the best way for you to kind of lock him into your team.
To me, he's more important to the team than Kyle Juszczyk, who's over here making almost $8 million a year. That's just me.
I agree. And when you look at it, so like the way I think about it, if you save that money on Juice, you put it towards Jennings, right? You could go a little more 11 personnel, which kind of makes your offense a little better, in my opinion, makes your passing attack better. I mean, I'm tired of seeing, like, the Niners offense is so explosive, but it also could be a lot more explosive if you go away from Juice being your, third receiver a lot of times, fourth receiver. If that's Jennings is a mismatch on anyone's slot corner, on anyone in terms of the linebackers and stuff like that. So you really, truly could make your offense even more explosive. Get rid of Juice. Let Jennings be that guy. I know if you look at the Rams, they use Ben Skoranek. They use him as a blocker. Jennings is a phenomenal blocker. Why not put your best players on the field? Keep Jennings, re-sign Jennings at that second round tender, 4.8. That's not too much. You let him be your third receiver, who's on the field at all times. I think it's time for Kyle to go a little bit more away from his true offense and start evolving as an offense. His offense has a great principle. Like, it's super good when it's just Kyle's offense. But if you start adding other principles to the offense, geez, this offense could be insane.
Absolutely. To me, Ayuk should be the number one option. He should be getting 150 to 180 targets a year. He won't, but that's what CeeDee Lamb gets, and I think Ayuk's that good. Jennings could be a number 2 receiver. They need to dial it back with Debo. Straight up. Sorry. They got, 11 targets for Debo. Never, ever, ever again. He doesn't do enough. He catches screens.
So I'm going to ask you, Grant. So I asked Rohan this question. I kind of threw him. So for the 49ers passing attack, right? The top players, in my opinion, and I want to see what you think it is. And this is down the field. This is not in just regular passing game, down the field. It should be Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, and then Debo Samuel. Where would you put Debo Samuel down, like passing down the field in that category?
What's his route tree? If it's man-to-man coverage, he's not getting open down the field. If it's zone, yeah, you might want to go to him. If it's wide open. But, yeah, Jennings, Ayuk, and Kittle can all get open, make contested catches. That's not really Debo anymore, or if it ever was. I don't know. Making way too much money to be a screen specialist.
That's the issue. And to me, while I don't know if I'll go as far as saying Debo is a worse player or receiver, a guy who should be in the progression compared to Jennings, I will say this. I think the 49ers need to focus in on exploiting their matchups. I know there's a lot of stuff, a lot of misdirection Kyle Shanahan likes to use, a lot of things he likes to use to free guys open, specifically in zone coverage. But at times, you really just got to go to your best guys. Brandon Ayuk is a one-on-one man beater. George Kittle will beat players in open coverage, And so to me, those are the two guys I think the offense should be focused around. I think Brandon Ayuk's got to get more volume. I think George Kittle's got to get more volume. That way you make Debo Samuel more, it's not expendable, but you kind of create more opportunities around him and then maximize his efficiency when he does get the ball. And maybe that changes the way you utilize him. Maybe it's, you have to find different ways to use him as a decoy because defenses won't fall for it as much. Or you put him as the third or fourth read in a progression where his acceleration, which is really his calling card when it comes to routes, can really come into fruition. That's kind of how he can separate from guys. Because if he's the number one read, he's not fast enough, nor is he slippery enough as a route runner to kind of consistently beat his defender. We saw that against elite coverage from Trent McDuffie in the playoffs. I think you want him as the backside so that you can see his acceleration come into fruition while also prioritizing guys like Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle.
It's crazy. The Niners lost their first Super Bowl under Kyle because they didn't go to Debo enough, and they lost their second one because they went to him way, way, way too much. Speaking of Kyle, is Kyle Shanahan too controlling over the roster and the defensive and the defense in general and who the defensive coordinator is going to be and what he does? I mean, he's kind of like the dictator of this. He's the emperor of Santa Clara. His dad was the emperor of Denver and then Washington.
I would say, yeah.
What do you think?
I would say, yeah. And what I mean by he's controlling over the roster, right? When you have a coach who falls in love with the player that he watches on film after the season, right? You have scouts and you have your executives doing the work throughout the entirety of the season, and not just doing it after the season and trying to pin guys that they love. Kyle finds someone he loves and says, you know what? I need to take this guy in the second or the third round.
That's how I study the draft. I turn on the tape now and I develop crushes on players really quickly. But these scouts have known these players since they're freshmen, and you know what I'm saying? Like, anyway, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I just want to say something I have in common with Kyle, how we scout players. You're
good. So like for me, I'm looking at him like, you can't do that, and that's where he becomes too controlling, and that's where you have a lot of players to be misses. Cameron Latu, like all the offense, Kyle has a lot of say in the draft. People tend to think he doesn't. He has a lot of say in what he's drafting for on offense. Danny Gray. So when you look at that, like for me, I think that's a huge concern because you're not letting your scouts and your executives do their job the right way. So for me, I think that's controlling.
What was the Danny Gray story? Wasn't it Kyle was in Cabo and he ran into Sonny Dykes, who's the coach at SMU?
SMU.
And he was like, "Hey, Danny Gray is really good." And Kyle's like, "Word." And Sonny Dykes was like, "Word." And he drafted Danny Gray. Isn't that the story? He got a tip at a buffet from Sonny Dykes. I'm just saying, I think that's the story.
That's crazy.
Proceed.
That is so, like, exactly right. Like you fall in love with a player just because someone tells you he's good. You end up drafting him, and then when during free agency off season, your team offense really doesn't get much better because you already drafted good players. You don't evolve as an offense. You don't add any new little tricks and stuff like that. You like to tell your defensive coordinator, you cannot do this on defense. You can't do this. This is what you're going to run. You hire a defense coordinator and tell him, hey, you know what, Steve Wilkes, you've never ran this defense, but you got to run this wide 9, cover 3 zone scheme.
That's Fred Warner. He'll tell you. He'll tell you how to do it. Ask Nick Bosa. He'll got you. He got you.
Oh, you like to coach in the box? Guess what? Come down here.
Guess what?
I want to see you, and I want to tell you, no, you can't run cover 0.
Yeah.
When you're trying to run cover 0. All right. So for me, I think it's too controlling. Like you can't really look at him and then we give them all the credit when they're succeeding and when they're doing great. But then when the Niners start losing or when they're not playing well,
hold on,
everyone
back
points
up for a
fingers.
Second. What you said was great. The way the Niners presented the move of Steve Wilkes was like, oh, it's a communication thing. We just wanted to be able to communicate with the players. You're saying this was a Kyle control thing. Like, no, I need to be able to look you in the eye and tell you no when you call something I don't want. I mean, that does make sense. He did do that a few times, including the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I personally think it was more so Kyle wanting to look at him down the line with his headset. You know how Kyle does, down the headset and say, the fuck are you doing? Like truly, and excuse my language, but that's literally how I see Kyle literally like I want to make eye contact instead of looking up to the booth where I can't see you.
Right.
Where we can make eye contact and like, hey, get your stuff together. Your defense is being terrible right now. My offense is great, even though I can't score more than 20 points in the Super Bowl. It's your fault. That's how controlling I think he is. And to be honest, like it's, for example, you're such a great offensive mind that you think you don't need to invest in the offensive line because you could scheme around it. He said that personally when he said, we're fine with Colton McKivitz because you could scheme around stuff like that. Well, obviously you can't. That's controlling.
Oof. So the question to me is, why is Kyle so controlling? How controlling is he? I don't think people realize how he has his hand in literally everything in the organization. I think his dad was the same way in Denver. I mean, we've heard that he's he's like he's in an office like Scarface. I mean, not just like Scarface, but kind of like Scarface with a lot of TVs, and he can tap into every meeting and not just listen, but like talk. Be like, nah, it's like this. That's incredibly controlling, and the Niners like it because they have to. They work for him. But man,
But do
why
they
is
like
he
it
like
though?
this? And is it a good thing? It doesn't seem like Andy Reid is like this.
That was an interesting story. I mean, when you hear, the surveillance thing, that was intriguing. I do think, it brings a completely different realm because you just don't think that that's something that goes on in the locker room. Sure, it's a way to hold them accountable and things like that. I do think Shanahan is controlling. I will say this, and I'm curious to hear what you think, Grant. But on the defensive coordinator spot, I personally don't think Kyle Shanahan wants to be as controlling as he was this past year. I think that's his ultimate goal. I think with Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans, especially as they progressed as defensive coordinators, there was a balance where he allowed them to kind of go into their range. When you wanted to call one of those exotic blitzes where it's kind of like a boomer bust type of play, he let them do that. You see different times, and they were accountable, the defensive coordinators, for their mistakes. But I think also there was a level of trust there that really never brewed with Steve Wilks, just given the disconnect between him and Shanahan's philosophies and him and the players with the way that they wanted to run their heralded scheme. So I think the goal for Kyle Shanahan will be, I want a defensive coordinator who I can trust and who can really, do what I want to do, but I'm not going to hold them back. Unfortunately, right now, and this is something when you talk about the defensive coordinator talk, is usually what you need for those guys are experienced guys who are proven, who can lead or who can have some sort of energy. If you're hiring someone from internally, there's nobody in that room right now with real play calling experience as a defensive coordinator. I think that there are a lot of intriguing candidates, but there's nobody with play calling experience. Now, I don't think that that's as important. I don't, because the last two coordinators never had play calling experience either. But in a year where it's extremely crucial that you hit on this defensive coordinator hire, because in my opinion, this window is really, like, with this core is really just this next upcoming season, puts increased amount of pressure, and you wonder, is there going to be more involvement from Shanahan on the defensive side, knowing how crucial this upcoming year is?
Is it my turn to talk again? I keep forgetting.
Go
Yeah,
for
he's
it.
too controlling. Yeah, Marco did go first. I don't understand why he's like this. I mean, it seems like you're in year 8. You should be delegating. You should be doing less at this point. You should be much more of a head coach than you were early on. And we understood when you came over, like, hey, I'm just going to sort of stay in my comfort zone and call the plays and be an OC and sort of have Robert Saleh who takes care of that side of the team and we'll work it out. But now it's like year 8. Why can't you be more like Andy Reid? He's the gold standard. He's not super anal and controlling like you are. At least it doesn't seem like it. Seems like he empowers his players and he beats you in the Super Bowl. So why don't you try to be a little bit? I mean, that's my thing with Kyle. Is this a character flaw, or is he going to grow out of this, or is this just who he is? It might be who his dad was. And what's crazy about his dad in Denver, he had that success early. He didn't lose a Super Bowl like Kyle. He went to the Super Bowl, won him, and then got more and more power in that organization. And a lot of people say Mike, the GM, got Mike, the head coach, fired. He was one of the original guys who wanted to buy the groceries if he was going to prepare the dinner, that kind of stuff. He got all the power in Denver, and it wasn't great. Kyle's always had all the power in the Niners. And when people say, hey, maybe he's the next Andy Reid, well, maybe that's true. Maybe he needs to leave and go to an organization where he doesn't have ultimate power and he has to work within a structure of a front office that's accomplished something. Maybe won a Super Bowl. Maybe that'd be the best thing for Kyle. I don't know. Because on this team with Jed York running the show, it's always going to be Kyle running the show. You could argue he's always going to have too much power here. How are you going to take it away when you've given it to him day one?
And that's the issue. He was given this power day one, right? Like, obviously this is something when you grow up in a football family, you're the head coach's son, you get an offense coordinator job a lot earlier than most.
Is he 29?
29. Him and his dad he was letting his son, Mike was letting Kyle draft players in Washington. He hand selected Trent, right? So this power starts building up on you. It starts becoming an ego thing, in my opinion. And I truly think Kyle needs to look at himself in the mirror right now and say, hey, look, you know what? I need to hire an offense coordinator, hire a defense coordinator I trust. Let me have someone where I don't have to be in all the meeting rooms. I could trust my coaches because you're never going to get veteran coaches who want to come coach with you if you're big brother constantly watching. Like,
true. Good point. Good point. No wonder you have all these position coaches who are pretty young because, man, you are right over their shoulder. I got a bonus question before we get out of here.
We knew this was coming. My boy,
I mean, look, it didn't go so well for Mac Jones and the Patriots, and it looks like they might get rid of him. And I don't know. There were a lot of reports that the Niners liked him or something, and Kyle liked him. You get him. He seems like he's available. What do you think? Mac Jones to the 49ers for nothing. What is he worth at this point? 4th round pick?
I mean, yeah. I mean, what I think the Niners would pay him around $2.7 million to be the backup. Good processing.
Seems to be a good teammate.
The 49ers
Likeable
scouted him
kid.
well, and back in 2021. I'll say this. Maybe I
Coachable.
wouldn't hate it. Maybe I wouldn't hate it. Backup quarterback. Personally, the reason is it would throw the backup quarterback discourse out the window because, I mean, I think 49er fans get too infatuated when it comes to backup quarterbacks and just the necessity to have a backup quarterback. When you're talking about the word quarterback, add the word. I mean, yeah, the backup. It's the backup. I mean,
yeah.
Just for example, we paid Sam Darnold, I think, nearly $6 million this year. I don't know if there were any fans. I know national media might have said it, but I don't know if there were any fans that would have been confident if you threw Sam Darnold out there and told him, can you win a key game for us? Nobody wanted to see Sam Darnold out there. At this point, backup quarterback, all it is a guy who can, embody whoever your starter is and help him progress as you're progressing behind the scenes as well. That's the way that I look at a conversation like backup quarterback. So for $2.5 million, what the hell? If it's worth what it'll probably be like 7th round pick swaps or something. I don't know if Mac Jones is worth anything anymore, but for 1 year, what the hell? Go ahead.
Remember when people really, 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 really liked Mac Jones? Thought he was going to be great. What do you think? Are they going to get Mac Jones? The next reclamation project? It was Sam Darnold, McCorkle.
So if you're going Mac Jones, who could potentially he could beat out Brock. Like, if we're being honest, like. They very, very fast processor.
I set you up for that one. I set you up for that one. I knew you were going to say that. Thank you.
But when you look at it, fast processor, right? Everything that people love about Brock, Mac Jones proved his rookie year. He got screwed by having a special teams coach and a defensive coordinator be his offensive coordinator year 2, which ruined
not a whole lot of talent in New England on offense.
He was ruined.
Who's his best receiver? Kendrick Bourne?
Devontae Parker. Like, come on.
I'm just saying.
Like he has the processing ability that people like with Brock, but I'm gonna go a next step. If we're gonna trade for Mac Jones, it kind of tells me that Kyle did really like Mac Jones in that draft, and he preferred Mac. But then they someone up there was like, "Hey, you can't do it. PR stunt. Niner fan base is gonna flip on you." If that was to happen, might as well go get Kirk Cousins. If you truly want to get someone you loved, go get Kirk Cousins. Like, to be honest, like this kind of writes the narrative of, hey, Kyle truly did love Mac Jones in that draft class where he took Trey Lance because the fan base and he kind of maybe the emotions of the fan base kind of got him in a certain situation. So if that's the case, if you truly loved Mac, we know how much you love Kirk Cousins, Kyle. Go get him. If that's what you really want to do, get someone you love and you trust. Hey, Kirk Cousins has been someone. Remember how he cried when the Niners traded for Jimmy Garoppolo because he said, my plan was to get Kirk Cousins and pair myself with Kirk Cousins for my coaching career. Just go get Kirk. He's a free agent. If that's the case.
He's a free agent?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on board to make Mac.
Grant's mind is swirling right now. He's like, oh boy. Grant, at least you got something to talk about at the owners' meetings.
Well, here's the thing with Kirk, like you got to give him the fully guaranteed contract, right? Coming off an Achilles injury, would he take anything less than a fully guaranteed contract at this point, or is he
might take lower regular money? But okay. I mean, he could. I think he'd get a good.
He's good. I always thought he was mid, but then he just diced the Niners up this year, and I was impressed.
He's always been good, and if you think about it, like him, imagine him with Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, like a good defense.
Here's the thing, though. He's never been super mobile and elusive, and now he's going to be less. But he does have a great arm, and he'd get the most out of Ayuk for sure.
And I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna go trade for Mac because Kyle loved him in that draft class, right? Like, that's kind of what it would kind of hint at, in my opinion. Just go get the person you truly love, and then that's Captain Kirk. Go, it feels great. Like when you go and you like that. Like,
okay, hold on. What do you think the odds are that the Niners sign Kirk Cousins this offseason?
Probably like 5%, if I'm being honest. The
okay.
money.
Yeah. I think I like that you took the discussion there, but I do think there's a higher probability that they would make a trade for Mac Jones because it's kind of like bringing in Sam Darnold. You're buying low for a guy that you maybe had a high grade on. So I think there's a possibility here. I think the Niners have shown they like taking shots on reclamation projects. This would be sort of in the Sam Darnold vein. Guy who was thought highly of, drafted high, and it's like, oh, we could get a top 10 pick or a top 15 pick for nothing. Need a backup quarterback.
Fifth round pick for Mac Jones. What are you thinking? Like, in terms of capital, like fifth round pick, it's not bad for $2.6 million. He's a backup quarterback who I wouldn't
be mad at that. I wouldn't be mad at that because your option is draft a quarterback in round 5. You may find the next Brock Purdy or trade a 5th round pick for a guy who went in the 1st round, who you liked. You don't act like you didn't have a 1st round grade on Mac Jones, Kyle. Don't act like you didn't. You said you liked him a lot. So he's right there.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah, you said it. You liked him. I wouldn't be surprised.
Or Grant, you sign Kirk Cousins, you trade Brock Purdy for a high 1st round pick, you get a great offensive tackle. Now you have 2 1st round picks. Now you kind of have a deeper roster.
See, now you're getting freaky, and I like it.
And like, I'm just like, if we're gonna go all in, might as well go all in, right? Like,
I feel it.
That's what you truly want to do. You want to go all in on this year.
Can we back up for a second? You casually said trade Brock Purdy for a high 1st round pick, and I was like, what do you think Brock Purdy be worth in a trade?
I don't know. I truly don't know what he would be worth in a
trade.
Who's
worth more in a trade, Brock Purdy or Brandon Ayuk?
Brandon Ayuk.
Ooh, I think
disagree.
Quarterback on the cheapest contract. It's the most. It's the best contract in football. I think he goes for multiple mid-round ones.
But you're also taking a big risk. You're taking a big risk because you don't have Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey coming with.
It's an interesting question.
You're taking a risk.
It's an interesting question.
I think they both go for at least one. I think they both go for 1 1st round pick, and maybe Brock gets a little bit more in terms of like 2nd or 3rd rounder. And obviously Brandon Ayuk would get more. I mean, if you look at the last couple of receivers traded, it was usually, I think Devontae Adams went for a 1st and a 2nd. So you're most likely Ayuk's going for a 1st and 2nd at minimum.
Well, you heard it here first, guys. Niners trading Brock and Ayuk.
No. Oh, no.
Dazza says, I think not drafting Wirfs will come back to haunt the Niners. He would have solidified the right side of the offensive line, and they could have slid him to left tackle when Trent retires. Yeah, that would have made that Buckner trade worth it.
2nd worst draft mistake that they've made.
That's the thing. If you're going to trade a cornerstone, a great player like Buckner, you really can't just be committed to spending that pick on his position. Got to make sure you're taking a franchise cornerstone at any position because that's what you're trading. Boxing fan, Kyle Scheme always has a defender unblocked. Fix it. I'm going to tell him. Corey Soto, prop bet. Where does Lance go? Stay as QB2 for Dallas or traded to Minnesota, Atlanta, Pitt? Great question.
Great question.
I think he stays. He's their backup.
I'd like him to stay. He doesn't need to be on 3 teams in 3 years. That's kind of like the end of your career. What do you think, Marco? Cap went up 30 million. Oh, was that the news today?
Yeah.
But isn't that kind of
it went up crazy.
Niners still only have $1 million, but
work it out. Is it worth trading Deebo and taking the cap hit? Forcing him the ball takes targets away from Brandon Ayuk, and Kittle's production is hardly elite. Yeah, the case for trading Deebo now frees up targets for other people. Probably his trade value is only going to go down from here. You don't free up much cap space.
No,
I don't do it. You can't.
I would do it.
You would. Well,
I would do it because I want. What would he get in a trade right in a? What would you get from right now? Second
probably. The issue is you're eating like 26 million though, or like not. It's some crazy amount that you're eating this year. I think it's not 26, $21 million, I believe, that you're eating in dead cap this year for a second round pick. That's where I think you.
What would you get for him next year?
I think you probably get you might downgrade one round. You might get a second or third for him.
I don't know. I'm scared. He's aging quick. Tony Nagatani says Kyle needs to use Danny Gray the way McDaniel uses the running back. A-Chain? You put Danny Gray running back? I don't think so, Tony. See what happens. 22 points in 75 minutes. Oh, man. Well put. That's all you really need to say. $20 just to say 22 points in 75 minutes.
It's worth it. 20 points for $20. I respect that.
Elite. It doesn't get much more elite than that. Well, look, you heard it here, guys. Mac Jones and the Niners. Look for it next week. Kyle, if you hadn't thought about it, I just put it in your head, and now you can't stop thinking about it. You love it. Marco, Rohan, great stuff today. Really enjoyed the show. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend.
Hey, thanks for having us on, man.
For sure. See you
As
guys.
always.